example of an oak log that was inoculated with Shiitake mushroom mycelia about 3 years ago. And if you can see the top of it, that white that you're seeing is the actual mycelium of the mushroom that's coursing through the wood. And as it moves through the wood, it digests and eats the wood as its energy source. Well, an oak log, which is extremely dense wood, only after a few years will just turn into this really soft wood duff. It just literally dissolves the wood and turns it into a sponge. And so mushrooms are truly one of our best friends because they're dissolving and eating all of that organic matter in the woodland floor. A typical oak log like this will last in production for 4 to 5 years. The larger diameter log will last up to 8 to 10 years, but it takes much longer to get a mushroom production system going on a wide diameter log versus a smaller diameter log. Okay, we're going to typically select a 4-foot section of fresh oak log from 4 to 6 inch diameter, preferably. And you take your drill with your 5/16 inch drill bit, and you'll want to drill a hole 1 inch deep, about 4 inches apart, all the way down, making a straight line down the log. And then you'll turn the log, usually about 4 inches, and drill a hole in between each of those drill holes, kind of creating a diamond-shaped pattern. And essentially you want to cover the log with holes in that fashion, 4 inches apart, all the way up and down the logs. So once you get your holes drilled, you take your wooden dowels that have been inoculated with the Shiitake mycelium, and you would stick each one dowel per hole, and you simply hammer that snugly into that hole. You want to make sure that your hole is not too wide, because if there's any airspace around the hole, your spawn will dry up and die. So once you've got your wooden dowels in each of the holes all the way around the log, you want to boil water with your wax. And again, this is the cheese wax. You want to melt a piece of that into your pot until it's liquid form. And once you've liquefied your cheese wax, you want to select either a paintbrush, usually a 1 inch, or a cotton swab, which you can buy from most mushroom shops. And so you take your paintbrush or your swab and you dip that into the wax and get a nice amount of wax on there, and you paint over each of those drilled holes so that you're completely sealing the spawn into the hole, essentially holding the moisture in and keeping the insects out. It's very important that you keep your logs stored in part day to full day shade, like under the dappled sun shade of a pine tree grove or a maple tree, for instance, is a great spot. And you always want to keep your logs just off the ground, usually using 2x4s or 4x4s to set those logs on so they're just hovering above the soil surface is great. And you can stack them side by side, or if you're inoculating mini logs, you can stack them in Lincoln log fashion, where you're stacking one over the other, kind of log cabin style, and that way you can easily harvest those mushrooms. You never want those logs to dry out. So in the spring and in the fall, it's not typically an issue of drying out. However, in the hottest months of summer, you may want to supplement with water. Whether you're using a rain barrel or, again, a chlorine-free source of water, just make sure those logs, you can take a drip irrigation line and run them over your logs to create kind of a moist situation. Water them for 1 to 2 hours about every third day in the hottest point of summer will really make a big difference in keeping your logs productive. Usually takes about 6 months to a year before you'll see your first harvest of shiitake mushrooms. However, after about 6 months, if you would like to try to force those mushrooms into production, you can take that oak log and soak it in a pond or a fluorine-free water source for 24 hours. And typically, within 24 hours of soaking that log, you'll start to see small pinheads of mushrooms emerging from each hole that you inoculated. And then within 3 days, you've got full flushes of shiitake mushrooms covering that log, which are delicious, nutritious, and excellent for market.